A 7-foot titan weighing 300 pounds and covered in foreign blood crashed through the sliding doors of Mercy General, instantly turning a Tuesday night into a massacre waiting to happen. He tossed 3 security guards like rag dolls, sending doctors fleeing and patients screaming, while police were still 10 minutes out. In the midst of the chaos, an unlikely figure stepped forward, Aurora. She was the mousy rookie nurse who had been scolded for trembling hands just an hour earlier, yet she didn't run. Instead, she walked right up to the giant, looked him in the eye, and did the unthinkable, freezing the hospital in disbelief and proving that the mouse was actually a lion in scrubs. The clock on the wall of the emergency department at Mercy General Hospital in Chicago clicked over to 10 p.m. It was a rainy Tuesday in November, the kind of night where the cold seeps into your bones and the ambulance bay doors rattle in their frames from the wind. Inside the triage station, the fluorescent lights hummed with that headache-inducing flicker that only night shift workers truly understand. "Aurora, for God's sake, move faster!" The sharp voice of head nurse Brenda Miller cut through the low murmur of the ER. Brenda was 50, cynical, and moved with the efficiency of someone who had seen it all and liked none of it. She stood with her hands on her hips, glaring at the newest addition to the nursing staff. Aurora Jenkins flinched. She was 28, but she looked younger. She was slight, barely 5'4", with messy brown hair pulled back in a loose clip that always seemed on the verge of falling out. Her scrubs looked a size too big, swallowing her frame. She kept her head down, her eyes fixed on the IV tray she was organizing. "I'm sorry, Brenda," Aurora mumbled, her voice barely a whisper. "I just wanted to make sure the saline ratios were—" "I don't pay you to check ratios that the pharmacy already checked," Brenda snapped, snatching a chart from the counter. "I pay you to get needles in arms and clear beds. You've been here 3 weeks, Jenkins, and you're still moving like you're afraid the floor is going to bite you. Dr. Sterling is already asking why I hired you." Aurora nodded, her face flushing crimson. She didn't argue. She never argued. Since she had arrived at Mercy General, Aurora had been a ghost. She ate lunch alone in her car. She never joined the other nurses for drinks after shifts. When trauma cases came in, car wrecks, shootings, the gritty stuff, Aurora always faded into the background, handling paperwork or stocking supplies, leaving the blood and guts to the real nurses. The general consensus among the staff was that Aurora Jenkins was soft. She was a hospitality hire, someone who belonged in a quiet dermatology clinic, not the inner-city meat grinder of a Level 1 trauma center. "Look at her," whispered intense Dr. Gregory Sterling to a resident near the coffee machine. Sterling was the attending physician that night, arrogant, brilliant, and possessed of a god complex that barely fit through the double doors. He gestured with his coffee cup toward Aurora, who was struggling to unlock a supply cabinet. "She's shaking, literally shaking. If a real bleeder comes in tonight, she's going to faint. Mark my words," the resident chuckled. "Maybe she's just cold?" "She's scared," Sterling said dismissively. "Some people have the stomach for this, and some people don't. She's prey. In the wild, she'd be eaten in 5 minutes." Aurora heard them. She had ears like a bat, though she pretended not to. She finally got the cabinet open, grabbed a box of gauze, and hurried toward bed 4 to dress a minor laceration on a construction worker's hand. As she worked, her hands did tremble slightly. But if anyone had looked closely, really closely, they would have noticed something strange. The tremble wasn't fear. It was restraint. When the construction worker, a burly man named Mike, winced as she cleaned the wound, Aurora's voice changed. It dropped an octave, becoming soothing, almost hypnotic. "Deep breath, Mike. Look at the wall. Count the tiles. You're okay. I've got you." Her movements, clumsy when she was being watched by Brenda, suddenly became fluid and precise. She wrapped the bandage with a speed and symmetry that was almost mechanical. Tight, efficient, perfect. Mike looked down at his hand. "Damn, nurse. That was fast. You done this before?" Aurora blinked, seemingly snapping out of a trance. She hunched her shoulders again, returning to the mousy rookie persona. Oh, a little. In nursing school. Just practice. She scurried away before he could ask anything else. Back at the nurses' station, the radio crackled to life. The static hiss signaled an incoming ambulance. Mercy Base, this is Unit 42. We are inbound, ETA 3 minutes. We have a walk-in picked up off 5th and Main. Male, approx 40s, highly agitated, possible substance abuse. He's big, really big. Vital signs are stable, but he's non-compliant. Brenda rolled her eyes and keyed the mic. Copy, 42. Drop him in Bay 2. Probably just another drunk fighting the air. She looked at Aurora. Jenkins, take Bay 2, and try not to let him vomit on you. If he gets rowdy, call security. Don't try to be a hero. Yes, ma'am, Aurora said softly. If only Brenda knew. Heroism was the last thing on Aurora's mind. She just wanted to survive the shift. But the universe, as it often does, had other plans. The man in the ambulance wasn't just a drunk. And he wasn't just big. He was a walking avalanche. The sliding doors of the ambulance bay hissed open, letting in a gust of rain and the smell of wet asphalt. The paramedics of Unit 42 didn't just wheel the stretcher in. They looked like they were fleeing a crime scene. "Clear the way," one paramedic shouted, his face pale. "He refused the restraints. He's walking." "What?" Brenda looked up from her computer. "You let a psych patient walk in?" Before the paramedic could answer, a shadow fell over the triage desk. The man who stepped out of the back of the ambulance had to duck his head to clear the doorframe. He was immense. He stood at least 6'10", a towering wall of muscle and scar tissue. He wore a torn, mud-stained army jacket that was 2 sizes too small for his chest, and his pants were ripped at the knees. But it was his face that stopped the room. A thick, matted beard covered his jaw, and a jagged scar ran from his left eyebrow down to his lip. His eyes were wide, darting around the room with the frantic, feral intensity of a trapped animal. He was sweating profusely despite the cold, his chest heaving like a bellows. His name, though no one knew it yet, was Sergeant Jackson the Bull Hayes, and he was currently operating in a reality that existed only in his head. "Where is she?" Jackson roared. His voice was a baritone thunderclap that rattled the glass partition of the reception desk. The waiting room went silent. A baby stopped crying. Dr. Sterling stepped out of Trauma Room 1, looking annoyed. "Excuse me, you cannot scream in here. This is a hospital. Lower your voice, or I will have you removed." It was the wrong thing to say. Jackson's head snapped toward Sterling. In his mind, he wasn't in a Chicago ER. The fluorescent lights were the blinding sun of the Korengal Valley. The beeping monitors were radio signals, and Dr. Sterling wasn't a doctor. He was an interrogator. I said, "Where is she?" Jackson lunged. The movement was terrifyingly fast for a man of his size. He covered the 20 feet to the nurse's station in 3 strides. "Security!" Brenda shrieked, diving behind the counter. 2 hospital security guards, Paul and Dave, were stationed by the vending machines. Paul was a retired cop, heavy-set and slow. Dave was a 20-year-old college student working part-time. They rushed forward, batons drawn. "Sir, get on the ground!" Paul shouted, reaching for Jackson's arm. It was like a toddler trying to stop a freight train. Jackson didn't even look at Paul. He simply backhanded the guard without breaking stride. The blow caught Paul in the chest, lifting the 200-pound man off his feet and sending him crashing into a cart of sterile equipment. Metal trays clattered loudly across the floor. Dave, the younger guard, froze. He held his baton up, shaking. Sir, please." Jackson grabbed Dave by the vest, lifted him one-handed, and tossed him aside like a bag of laundry. Dave slid across the polished floor and hit the wall with a sickening thud. Chaos erupted. Nurses screamed and scattered. Patients in the waiting room scrambled over chairs to get to the exit. Dr. Sterling, realizing his authority meant nothing to a giant in a fugue state, turned pale and backed away, colliding with a crash cart. He's got a weapon! Someone screamed. Jackson didn't have a gun, but he had ripped a metal IV pole out of its stand. He held the heavy steel rod like a baseball bat, swinging it in a wide arc. "Get down! Everyone get down!" he bellowed, his eyes seeing invisible enemies. "Incoming! Mortars! Get down!" He smashed the IV pole into the reception desk, shattering the safety glass. Shards rained down on the receptionists who were huddled underneath, screaming. Aurora Jenkins was standing by bed 2, clutching a clipboard to her chest. She watched the carnage unfold with wide eyes. Her heart hammered against her ribs. But unlike the others, she wasn't running. She was observing. She saw the way Jackson moved. He wasn't stumbling like a drunk. He was checking corners. He was clearing his sectors. He was protecting his flank. He's not crazy, she thought, her mind racing. He's tactical. She looked at his wrist as he swung the pole. A faded tattoo. 75th, Ranger Regiment. He's having a flashback, Aurora whispered to herself. "Jenkins, run, you idiot!" Brenda screamed from behind the desk. "Get to the break room and lock the door." Aurora didn't move. She couldn't. If she ran, someone was going to die. Dr. Sterling was cornered against the wall, and Jackson was advancing on him, raising the metal pole for a killing blow. "Tell me where the extraction point is!" Jackson screamed at the terrified doctor, saliva flying from his mouth. "Tell me!" Dr. Sterling held up his hands, sobbing. "I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. Please!" Jackson roared and tensed his muscles to swing. Aurora dropped her clipboard. It hit the floor with a clack. She didn't run away. She walked forward. The distance between Aurora and the giant was 30 feet. To the onlookers peeking out from behind curtains and overturned chairs, it looked like a suicide attempt. Aurora looked like a child next to him. A stiff breeze could knock her over. "Aurora, no!" a nurse named Jessica cried out. Aurora ignored her. She didn't run. Running triggers a predator response. She walked with a deliberate, rhythmic pace. She didn't look at his weapon. She looked at his eyes. She stopped 10 feet away from him. "Sergeant Hayes!" Her voice wasn't the whispery, timid voice of Aurora the rookie. It was sharp, clear, and projected from the diaphragm. It was a command voice. Jackson froze. The metal pole hovered inches from Dr. Sterling's head. The use of his rank, Sergeant, cut through the fog in his brain for a split second. He spun around, searching for the source of the command. He saw a small woman in oversized blue scrubs, but in his hallucination, she was blurry. "Identify!" Jackson barked, lowering his center of gravity, ready to strike her. "Corpsman up!" Aurora shouted. The terminology was specific. It was the call for a medic on the battlefield. Jackson blinked, confusion warring with the rage in his eyes. "Doc?" "Stand down, Ranger," Aurora said, her voice hard as iron. She took a step closer, her hands open, but held at chest level, non-threatening, but ready. "We are in the green zone. The perimeter is secure. You are flagging a friendly. Lower your weapon." Dr. Sterling, still cowering on the floor, looked up at Aurora in bewilderment. What was she saying? What was a green zone? Jackson shook his head, fighting the visions. No, they're coming. "The insurgents. They have the perimeter. I have to find Mary." "Mary is safe," Aurora lied instantly, her tone unwavering. She stepped closer, 5 feet now. She was well within his striking range. One swing of that pole would shatter every bone in her upper body. I just radioed command. "Mary is at the LZ, landing zone. She's waiting for you, Sergeant. But you can't go to her with a weapon. You know the protocol." Jackson's breathing hitched. He looked at the pole in his hands, then back at Aurora. The rage was starting to crack, replaced by a desperate, heart-breaking sorrow. I can't protect her," he choked out, a tear cutting a clean line through the blood and dirt on his cheek. "I'm too slow. I'm always too slow." "You're not slow," Aurora said softly, changing her tone from commanding to comforting. She took another step. She was 2 feet away. She had to crane her neck to look him in the eye. "You're the lead element. But the fight is over, Jackson. Weapon down. She reached out a trembling hand, not trembling from fear this time, but from adrenaline, and touched the cold steel of the IV pole. Give it to me, Sergeant. Dayan. For a heartbeat, the room suspended in silence. Everyone held their breath. Jackson's grip on the pole loosened. He looked at Aurora, his eyes searching hers for any sign of deception. Is everyone safe? He whispered. All clear, Aurora said. Jackson let out a shuddering sigh and released the pole. Aurora took it and gently set it on the floor. But then the spell broke. Behind them, the elevator doors dinged loudly. 2 police officers burst out, guns drawn, shouting at the top of their lungs. Police, drop it! Get on the ground, now! The sudden noise shattered the fragile reality Aurora had built. Jackson's eyes snapped wide open. The officers weren't friendlies, they were the enemy ambush. The green zone was gone. Ambush! Jackson screamed. He didn't go for the pole. He went for Aurora. In his mind, she was now a threat, a spy who had tricked him. He reached out with a hand the size of a catcher's mitt and grabbed Aurora by the throat. He lifted her off the ground as if she weighed nothing. Traitor! He roared, squeezing. Shoot him! Shoot him! Dr. Sterling screamed from the floor. The police officers hesitated, fearing they would hit the nurse. Aurora dangled in the air, her feet kicking helplessly. Her vision began to spot with black dots. The pressure on her windpipe was immense. He was going to crush her larynx in seconds. But Aurora Jenkins didn't panic. Her face turned purple, but her eyes remained laser-focused. She didn't claw at his hands like a victim. She reached for his thumb. She knew something the police, the doctors, and even Jackson didn't know. She knew how to dismantle a human body. Aurora swung her legs up, wrapping them around Jackson's massive bicep to gain leverage. She isolated his thumb, bent it backward against the joint, and simultaneously drove her elbow into the bundle of nerves in his forearm. It was a Krav Maga maneuver, executed with the precision of a master. Jackson roared in pain, his grip involuntarily releasing. Aurora dropped to the floor, gasping for air. But she didn't retreat. As Jackson stumbled back, clutching his arm, he swung a wild haymaker punch at her head, a blow that would have decapitated her. Aurora ducked under the punch, pivoting on her left heel. She moved behind him, kicked the back of his knee to buckle his leg, and locked her arm around his neck. She wasn't choking him. She was applying a vascular sleeper hold. She cinched it tight, pressing her carotid arteries against his, cutting off the blood flow to his brain. "Sleep, Sergeant," she rasped into his ear, her voice straining with the effort of holding back 300 pounds of thrashing muscle. "Just sleep." Jackson bucked like a wild bronco. He slammed backward into the wall, trying to crush her. Aurora grunted but held on. She wrapped her legs around his waist, locking her ankles. The hooks were in. She was a backpack of doom attached to a giant. The police officers stood there, guns lowered, mouths agape. Dr. Sterling watched in stunned silence. 10 seconds. 20 seconds. Jackson's thrashing slowed. His arms fell to his sides. His massive legs gave out. Aurora rode him down to the floor, maintaining the hold until she felt his body go completely limp. She checked his pulse, strong and steady, then released him and rolled away, gasping for breath, massaging her bruised throat. The room was dead silent. The only sound was the hum of the vending machine and Aurora's ragged breathing. She sat up, adjusted her messy hair clip, and pulled her oversized scrubs back into place. She looked up to see 50 pairs of eyes staring at her. Head nurse Brenda slowly stood up from behind the desk. "Jenkins," she whispered. "What? Who are you?" Aurora looked down at her hands. They were shaking again. She looked at the unconscious giant, then at the police officers. "He needs 10 milligrams of haloperidol and 2 of Ativan," Aurora rasped, her voice hoarse. "And get a cardiac monitor. He's got an arrhythmia." She stood up, ignoring the stares. I need to go to the bathroom." She walked past the stunned police officers, past the gaping doctor, and pushed through the double doors. But the story wasn't over. As the police moved in to cuff the unconscious Jackson, one of the older officers, Captain Miller, stopped. He looked at the way Jackson had been taken down. He looked at the tactical precision of the hold. Then he looked at the file that had fallen out of Jackson's pocket during the struggle. It was a VA medical file, but it wasn't Jackson's file that caught his eye. It was the realization of what he had just seen. "That wasn't nursing school," Captain Miller muttered to his partner. "That was Special Forces takedown tech." He looked at the swinging doors where Aurora had disappeared. "Who the hell is she, Doctor?" Sterling picked himself up, brushing dust off his pristine white coat. His ego was bruised, but his curiosity was piqued. He walked over to the computer and pulled up Aurora's employee file. Name: Aurora Jenkins. Previous employment: school nurse, St. Mary's Prep. References: standard. "It's a lie," Sterling whispered. "It's all a lie." He picked up the phone. He had a friend at the Pentagon. It was 3 a.m. in D.C., but he didn't care. He needed to know who was hiding in his ER. The bathroom mirror was cracked in the corner, a spiderweb of glass that distorted Aurora's reflection. She gripped the porcelain sink with white-knuckled hands, staring at the woman staring back. The bruises were already forming on her neck. Ugly violet fingerprints left by Jackson's massive hand. She splashed freezing water on her face, trying to wash away the adrenaline that was making her teeth chatter. "Stupid," she berated herself. "Stupid, stupid, stupid. You exposed yourself." For 3 years, she had been invisible. She was Aurora Jenkins, the mediocre nurse from Ohio. She wasn't the other person anymore. The person who knew how to dismantle a 300-pound Ranger in 6 seconds. The person who had a file so black it didn't physically exist. She reached into her scrub pocket and pulled out a small, battered silver coin. She rubbed it with her thumb, a nervous tick. Breathe, deny, deflect. The door creaked open. It was Brenda. The head nurse didn't shout this time. She didn't look angry, and she looked terrified. She stood in the doorway, holding an ice pack. "Aurora?" Brenda's voice was uncharacteristically gentle. "The police want to talk to you, in the break room." Aurora dried her face with a rough paper towel, instantly hunching her shoulders, forcing herself back into the role of the mouse. Am I in trouble, Brenda? I didn't mean to hurt him. I panicked." Brenda stared at her. "Panicked? Aurora, you didn't panic. You took down a man who tossed Paul and Dave like salads. You saved Dr. Sterling's life." She stepped forward and handed Aurora the ice pack. "Here, for your neck." "Thanks," Aurora whispered, pressing the cold pack to her throat. "Who are you, really?" Brenda asked, her eyes searching Aurora's face. "I'm just a nurse," Aurora lied, looking at the floor. "Nurses don't move like that," Brenda said quietly. "My ex-husband was a Marine. He did 2 tours in Fallujah. He moves like you. He scans rooms like you." "I took a self-defense class at the YWCA," Aurora mumbled. "The instructor was very thorough." Brenda didn't buy it, but she didn't press. "Come on, Captain Miller is waiting." The break room was stale with the smell of old coffee and burnt popcorn. Captain Miller sat at the small round table, his notebook open. He was a seasoned cop, 60 years old, with eyes that had seen every lie Chicago had to offer. Beside him stood Dr. Sterling, who was pacing nervously, checking his phone every 30 seconds. Aurora sat down, keeping her posture small. "Miss Jenkins," Miller started, his voice gravelly. "That was quite a show out there." "I was scared," Aurora squeaked. "Scared people run," Miller said flatly. "Scared people scream. You didn't do either. You engaged a hostile target, de-escalated verbally using military jargon, and then executed a textbook rear naked choke with a body triangle. That's not scared. That's training." He leaned forward. "Where did you serve?" "I didn't," Aurora said, widening her eyes. I've never been in the military, I swear. Then how did you know the term corpsman up? Miller shot back. How did you know to call it a green zone? How did you know he was a ranger just by looking at a faint tattoo on a moving target? Aurora swallowed hard. This was the danger. The details. I watch a lot of movies. Black Hawk Down, Zero Dark 30. I just guessed. Doctor. Sterling stopped pacing. He scoffed loudly. She's lying, Captain. Look at her pulse. She's not even nervous. She's acting. Sterling walked over to the table, slamming his hand down. I checked your file, Jenkins. St. Mary's Prep in Ohio. I called the number for the reference listed on your CV 10 minutes ago. Aurora's heart skipped a beat, but her face remained impassive. And, Miller asked, it went to a voicemail, Sterling said triumphantly, but not a school voicemail, a burner phone, a generic Google Voice greeting. And the nursing license number you provided? It clears the state board, but the issue date is 3 years ago. Exactly 3 years ago. What were you doing before 2021, Aurora? I was caring for my sick mother, Aurora improvised. She had dementia. I was off the grid. Bull, Sterling spat. You're a fraud. You're a liability to this hospital. Doctor, back off, Miller warned. He looked back at Aurora. Look, miss, I don't care if you lied on your resume. That man out there, Jackson Hayes, he's in restraints now, sedated. But we ran his prints. Do you know who he is? Aurora shook her head. He's a Silver Star recipient, Miller said softly. Served 4 tours, Rangers, Delta. He went AWOL 6 months ago from a VA psych ward in Maryland. The military has a bolo, be on the lookout, for him. They consider him armed and extremely dangerous. And you put him to sleep like a baby. Miller closed his notebook. You did a good thing tonight. But ordinary people don't do good things with that level of precision. If you're in trouble, if you're running from something, you can tell me. Aurora looked into the captain's eyes. She saw genuine concern there. For a second, she wanted to tell him. She wanted to say, yes, I'm running. I'm running from the memories of the village I couldn't save. I'm running from the medals they tried to pin on my chest while the blood was still under my fingernails. But she couldn't. I'm just a nurse, she repeated, her voice trembling slightly. Can I go back to my patients now? Miller sighed, defeated. Go, but don't leave town. Aurora stood up and hurried out of the room. As the door closed, Dr. Sterling pulled out his phone again. He dialed a number he hadn't used since his residency at Walter Reed. Colonel Sharp. It's Gregory Sterling. Yes, listen, I have a situation here. I need you to run a background check on a ghost. Her name is Aurora Jenkins. No, I think that's an alias. She just took down a Tier 1 operator in my ER with her bare hands. Yes, I'm serious. Okay, I'll send you her photo. Sterling snapped a picture of Aurora through the glass window of the break room door as she walked away. He hit send. Gotcha, Sterling whispered. 2 hours passed. The adrenaline in the ER had faded, replaced by the dull fatigue of the graveyard shift. The giant, Jackson Hayes, was handcuffed to bed 4, heavily sedated, with 2 police officers guarding him. Aurora tried to busy herself with stocking IV bags in the supply closet, staying as far away from the main floor as possible. She felt the walls closing in. She knew she had to leave. Tonight. She would pack her bag, get in her beat-up Honda Civic, and drive until the gas ran out. Maybe Arizona this time, or Montana. She was just reaching for her car keys in her locker when the PA system crackled. Code Black, main entrance, Code Black. Code Black meant a bomb threat or a mass casualty event involving VIPs. It meant the hospital was being locked down. Aurora froze. They found him. She rushed out to the nurses' station just as the automatic doors of the main entrance were forced open. They didn't slide. They were pushed. 6 men in full tactical gear, black uniforms, helmets, assault rifles across their chests, poured into the lobby. They moved with a fluidity that made the hospital security guards look like mall cops. They didn't shout. They fanned out, securing the perimeter in silence. Behind them walked a man who radiated authority. He wore a crisp army dress uniform, the chest heavy with ribbons, 3 stars on his shoulder. General Tobias Holloway. The entire ER went deadly silent. Dr. Sterling, who had been smugly waiting for his colonel to call back, dropped his clipboard. He had called a colonel. A 3-star general showing up meant this was way above his pay grade. "Who is the attendant in charge?" General Holloway barked. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried to every corner of the room. Dr. Sterling stepped forward, smoothing his white coat, trying to look important. "I am. Dr. Gregory Sterling. General, I presume you're here for the prisoner, Sergeant Hayes?" Holloway looked at Sterling with disdain. "I am here for my man, yes. Is he alive?" "He is sedated and restrained," Sterling said. "He assaulted my staff and destroyed property. I expect full compensation from the Department of Defense." Holloway ignored him. He walked past the doctor toward bed 4. He looked down at the sleeping giant, Jackson Hayes. The general's expression softened. He reached out and touched the sergeant's shoulder. "We got you, son," Holloway whispered. "We're going home." He turned to his men. "Prep him for transport. I want him at Walter Reed by sunrise." "Wait a minute," Sterling protested. "You can't just take him. The police have charges pending." "The United States Army has jurisdiction here, Doctor," Holloway cut him off. "Sergeant Hayes is a classified asset. Whatever happened here tonight didn't happen. Do you understand?" Sterling's face turned red. "This is a civilian hospital? And what about the nurse? He nearly killed her." Holloway paused. He turned slowly. "Nurse?" "The girl who took him down," Sterling said, pointing towards the back hallway. "She's the one you should be investigating. She took down a 300-pound killing machine without breaking a sweat. If your man is a classified asset, then she's a lethal weapon." Holloway's eyes narrowed. "Show me the footage." Captain Miller, who had been watching from the side, stepped up. He held up a tablet displaying the security recording of the fight. Holloway watched the screen. He watched Aurora walk up to Jackson. He watched the de-escalation. He watched the chokehold. As he watched, the color drained from the general's face. His stoic military mask crumbled. "Rewind that," Holloway commanded. "Zoom in on her face." Miller pinched the screen. Aurora's pixelated face filled the frame. Holloway let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for years. "Impossible." He looked up, scanning the room frantically. "Where is she? Where is this nurse?" "She's hiding in the supply closet, probably," Sterling sneered. "I told you she's a fraud." Holloway grabbed Sterling by the lapels of his lab coat, pulling him close. The general's eyes were blazing with an intensity that terrified the doctor. "You listen to me," Holloway hissed. "That woman is not a fraud. If that is who I think it is, she is the only reason everyone in this room is still breathing. You have no idea what walked into your hospital." Who is she?" Sterling stammered. "She's the ghost," Holloway said, releasing him. "Search the floor. I want a perimeter on all exits. No one leaves. Find her, now." The tactical team began to move, checking rooms. Aurora watched from the crack in the door of the linen closet down the hall. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She knew General Holloway. She had served under him in Syria. She was the one who pulled him out of the burning Humvee in Damascus when his security detail was wiped out. She was the one who disappeared 3 years ago because she knew too much about the operation that went wrong. The operation that broke Jackson Hayes. He knows, Aurora thought. If he finds me, I go back to the black site, or I go to prison. She looked at the back exit sign glowing red at the end of the hall. It was 50 yards away. Between her and the door were 2 of the tactical operators. She touched the silver coin in her pocket again. Fight or flight? Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was an unknown number. She answered it, keeping her voice to a whisper. "Hello?" "Aurora Jenkins, or whatever you're calling yourself today," a distorted voice said on the other end. "Look up." Aurora looked up at the security camera in the hallway. The red light was blinking. "Who is this?" "A friend," the voice said. "The general isn't there to arrest you, but the men with him. They aren't regular army. They're contractors, mercenaries. If they take Jackson, he's dead. If they take you, you're dead." "What?" Aurora's blood ran cold. "Holloway is compromised," the voice said rapidly. "He's being blackmailed. He's there to clean up loose ends. Jackson is a loose end. You are a loose end. You have about 30 seconds before they breach that closet. You need to get Jackson and get out. Get him out. He's unconscious and weighs 300 pounds, Aurora hissed. "Then wake him up," the voice said. "The elevator to the basement morgue is on your left. Go, now." The line went dead. Aurora looked down the hall. One of the tactical soldiers was moving toward her closet, his weapon raised. He wasn't checking patients. He was hunting. Aurora kicked the door open. She didn't run away. She ran back toward the lion's den, back towards the lobby, back toward Jackson. She burst into the main ER area. "General Holloway!" she screamed. Holloway spun around. When he saw her, his eyes widened. For a split second, there was relief. Then a flicker of deep, regretful shame. "Secure her!" Holloway shouted to his men. "Don't shoot! Just secure her!" But the men didn't lower their weapons. Two of the soldiers raised their rifles, aiming directly at Aurora's chest. They weren't following the general's orders to secure. They were following different orders. Time slowed down. Aurora saw the fingers tightening on the triggers. She was 20 feet away from cover. She was dead. Suddenly, a roar shook the room. Bed 4 exploded. Jackson Hayes, who was supposed to be sedated, ripped the metal railing off the side of the bed. The handcuffs snapped the thin metal bar of the stretcher with a shriek of tearing steel. The giant was awake, and he was angry. He launched himself off the bed, placing his massive body between the soldiers and Aurora, just as the first shots rang out. Pop, pop! 2 bullets slammed into Jackson's back. He didn't even flinch. He grabbed the nearest soldier by the helmet and slammed him into the floor so hard the tile cracked. "Move, Doc!" Jackson screamed at Aurora, his eyes clear and focused for the first time. "Get to the LZ." Aurora didn't hesitate. She slid across the floor, grabbed a scalpel from a tray, and slashed the straps holding Jackson's legs. "Basement!" she yelled. "Go!" The ER dissolved into a war zone. The elevator doors groaned shut, just as the glass of the observation window shattered under a hail of gunfire. Aurora slammed her fist against the B2 button. Basement level 2, the morgue. Inside the metal box, the silence was deafening, broken only by Jackson's labored breathing. The giant leaned heavily against the wall, blood soaking the back of his tattered army jacket. "Check your 6, Jackson grunted, his voice thick with pain, but surprisingly lucid. "Did they breach?" "We're clear for the moment," Aurora said, her hands already moving. She ripped the back of his jacket open. 2 distinct entry wounds. "The rounds hit your trapezius and latissimus. No exit wounds. They're still inside. You're losing blood, Sergeant." Jackson looked down at her. The fog of his PTSD had lifted, replaced by the hyper-focus of combat. He stared at the small woman who had choked him out just an hour ago. He saw the scar above her ear, usually hidden by her hair. "Captain Jenkins?" Jackson whispered, his eyes widening. Is that really you? They told me you died in the explosion in Aleppo." "They lied, Jackson," Aurora said, applying pressure to his back with a wad of gauze she'd swiped from a crash cart. "They scrubbed us, just like they tried to scrub you. The general..." Jackson grimaced as the elevator jerked downward. "Holloway. He was there. Why is he hunting us?" "He's not hunting us," Aurora said darkly. "He's cleaning up. He signed off on the off-book mission that got our squad killed. If we're alive, his career, and the private contractors he hired, go to prison. Those men upstairs aren't army. They're Black Arrow mercenaries. They don't take prisoners." The elevator chimed. Ding. The doors opened into the pitch-black basement. The mercenaries had cut the power. The only light came from the red emergency bulbs casting long, bloody shadows down the concrete corridor. "Move!" Aurora commanded. They moved into the labyrinth of the hospital's underbelly. This wasn't the sterile ER. This was where the dead were kept, where the laundry was washed, and where the furnaces burned. It was a maze of pipes, steam, and darkness. "They have night vision," Aurora whispered. "We're blind. We need to even the odds." "I can hold the hallway," Jackson growled, trying to stand tall despite the blood loss. "I'll buy you time to exit." "Negative, Sergeant. We leave together or not at all," Aurora hissed. She scanned the room. They were in the chemical storage area next to the morgue. Her eyes landed on a row of industrial cleaning supplies, ammonia, bleach, and on the wall, a fire hose reel. "Jackson," Aurora said, her voice turning cold. "Can you rip that pipe off the wall?" She pointed to a steam pipe running along the ceiling. It was insulated but hot. "Easy," Jackson said. "When I give the signal, bust the pipe. Fill the corridor with steam. Their night vision goggles rely on thermal signatures and light amplification. Steam blinds thermal. It'll make their optics useless." Footsteps echoed from the stairwell at the far end of the hall. The tactical team had bypassed the elevator. They were moving fast, boots thudding in unison. "Contact front," Jackson whispered. 4 laser sights cut through the red darkness, sweeping the hallway. "Target acquired," a voice crackled over a radio. "End of the hall. Take the shot." "Now!" Aurora screamed. Jackson roared, jumping up and grabbing the steam pipe with both hands. With a heave that strained every fiber of his massive frame, he wrenched the steel pipe downward. Crack hiss! A jet of scalding white steam exploded into the hallway with the force of a jet engine. The noise was deafening. Within seconds, the corridor was a whiteout. "I can't see! Thermal is white! I'm blind!" one of the mercenaries shouted. "Advancing!" Aurora yelled to Jackson. "Low crawl, go!" They dropped to the wet floor, crawling beneath the rising steam cloud. The mercenaries were firing blindly now, bullets sparking off the concrete walls above Aurora's head. Aurora didn't retreat. She advanced. She was a ghost in the mist. She reached the first mercenary, who was frantically wiping his goggles. She didn't use a gun. She used a scalpel she had palmed from the ER. She slashed his Achilles tendon, then rose up and drove the handle into his temple. He dropped without a sound. She grabbed his falling assault rifle and tossed it back to Jackson. "Support fire," she ordered. Jackson caught the weapon. Even wounded, he was a marksman. He fired 3 controlled bursts. The remaining 3 mercenaries in the hallway dropped, their armor sparked by the impacts. "Clear!" Jackson shouted. "Not clear," Aurora said, checking the pulse of the lead mercenary. "Their comms are active. The rest of the team knows we're down here. We need to get to the loading dock." They ran past the silver drawers of the morgue, the smell of formaldehyde mixing with the metallic tang of blood and steam. They burst through the heavy double doors leading to the loading bay ramp. Fresh night air hit their faces. Rain was still pouring down. But as they ran up the ramp toward the parking lot, a blinding spotlight hit them. "Hold!" a voice boomed. Blocking the exit was an armored SUV. Standing in front of it, flanked by 2 more heavily armed men, was General Holloway. He held a pistol, but it wasn't aimed at them. It was aimed at the ground. Behind him stood the leader of the mercenary team, a man named Kane, who had a sniper